A convenience store robbery. A desperate thief. And a victim who refuses to stay silent. What happens when courage meets justice? Andre's story will keep you on the edge of your seat. And leave you questioning how far you'd go to take back control. It was just another Wednesday evening. At Henderson's Market, a small convenience store, tucked between a laundromat and a bustling bus stop in downtown Indianapolis. Andre Johnson, 34, stood behind the counter, his sharp eyes scanning the room. As he organized the bills in the cash register, he wasn't just any employee. He was the backbone of this place. The guy who always picked up extra shifts and stayed late when someone else called out. For Andre, this job wasn't just about making ends meet. It was his lifeline, a way to support his wife Lauren and their 2 young boys that night. A steady stream of customers came and went. Some picking up snacks, others grabbing last-minute groceries. Andre greeted each one with a friendly nod and a warm, "How you doing tonight?" His shift had been uneventful so far. Just the way he liked it, but in the back of his mind, he knew that trouble didn't always announce itself. Around 9:45 p.m., as the street lights flickered outside, a man entered the store. His hood was pulled low over his face, and he walked with a deliberate pace that immediately set Andre on edge. The man didn't grab a basket, didn't glance at the shelves. Instead, he made a beeline for the counter. Andre had seen all kinds of people in his years working retail. Those who looked shady but were harmless, and those who seemed normal until they weren't. But there was something about this man that felt off. As the stranger stopped a few feet away, Andre's instincts screamed at him to stay alert. He kept his expression neutral, but his hands instinctively moved to the edges of the counter, ready to press the panic button hidden underneath. "If necessary, can I help you with something?" Andrea asked, his voice steady but cautious. The man didn't respond. He shifted slightly, his right hand disappearing into the pocket of his hoodie. Andrea's heart pounded, but he didn't move. And that's when everything changed. Andrea had no idea that the next few minutes would upend his entire life. The man pulled out a gun. It wasn't large, but its presence was undeniable. The kind of object that could silence even the busiest room. Andre's breath hitched as the barrel pointed straight at him. His mind raced, but his body stayed frozen, as if fear had tied him to the spot. "Open the register," the man growled, his voice muffled by the scarf covering his face. His eyes darted around the store, checking for cameras, witnesses, or anyone who might intervene. Andrea raised his hands slowly, palms facing outward, a universal gesture of compliance. "All right, man. Just stay calm," he said, evenly. He knew better than to argue or make sudden moves. His priority was staying alive for his family, for his kids who depended on him to walk through the front door every night. With trembling hands, Andre pressed the button to open the cash drawer. The soft whir of the register felt deafening. In the tense silence, he began scooping out the bills, laying them neatly on the counter. As the gunman watched every move like a hawk. "Faster," the man barked, slamming his free hand on the counter. The sudden noise made Andrea flinch, and the coins in the drawer rattled. He hurried, emptying the till as fast as his shaking hands would allow. As Andre handed over the last of the cash, he dared to glance at the man's face, searching for anything: hesitation, desperation, maybe even regret. Instead, all he saw was cold determination. This wasn't a man making a mistake. He knew exactly what he was doing. Now the safe, the robber demanded, jerking his chin toward the back office. Andrei's stomach dropped. The safe wasn't something he could open. It required the manager's code. And the manager wasn't there. "I can't open it," Andrei said, trying to keep his voice calm. "Only the manager has the code." The gunman's eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me, I swear, man. It's locked until morning." "There's nothing I can do," Andrei replied, holding his hands up again. The robber hesitated, his frustration evident in the way his grip tightened on the weapon. Andrea held his breath, wondering if this was the moment everything would go horribly wrong. Then, without another word, the man grabbed the cash, stuffed it into a worn backpack and bolted for the door. Andrea exhaled sharply, his knees threatening to buckle. He wanted to feel relief, but it was quickly replaced by anger and helplessness. The man had taken more than just money. He'd taken Andrei's sense of safety, his dignity, and a piece of his pride. The store was eerily quiet now, save for the faint sound of a car engine revving in the distance. Andrea glanced at the security cameras, hoping they had caught a clear shot of the robber's face. He reached for his phone and dialed 911, his hands still trembling, as he recounted the ordeal to the dispatcher. When the police arrived, Andrei walked them through every detail. The man's height, his voice, the gun, the backpack. But as he spoke, he couldn't shake the feeling that justice might not come, that this man might get away with everything. Andrei thought the worst was over, but in reality it was just the beginning. The following morning, Andrei sat in his tiny kitchen, staring blankly at his cup of coffee. The events of the previous night replayed in his mind. Like a broken record, every detail, every sound, every second of the encounter clung to him, refusing to fade. His wife, Lauren, sat across from him, her eyes filled with worry, as she watched her husband silently wrestle with his thoughts. "You okay?" she asked softly. Reaching for his hand, Andrei nodded, but his grip on the coffee mug betrayed him. It wasn't fine, he wasn't fine. The store had been his safe space, a place where he felt in control. Now it felt tainted, like a constant reminder of his vulnerability. By the time he arrived for his shift later that day, the store had already moved on. The cash drawer was restocked, the broken camera near the entrance replaced, and the morning crew had cleaned up like nothing had ever happened. His manager, a balding man named Tom, gave him a pat on the back. "Tough night, huh? Don't worry, the cops are on it," he said, as if that would make everything better. But Andrei couldn't just not worry. He knew how these things usually went. The police had a lot on their plate, and a petty robbery in a convenience store wasn't going to be their top priority. Sure, they'd filed a report, but Andrei had seen too many cases like this vanish into a file organizer neglected. Still, Andrei couldn't let it go. Each time he served a client, he wound up looking toward the entryway, half anticipating that the looter should stroll back in. His colleagues saw his disquiet. However, nobody considered saying anything. The occurrence had transformed him, made him more mindful, more watched. That evening, after the store shut, Andres remained late to tidy up. As he cleaned the walkways, his eyes meandered to the surveillance cameras. He replayed the recording of the burglary, stopping and rewinding, looking for whatever he could have missed. There it was, toward the edge of the casing. Not long before the burglar left the store, a little detail grabbed Andrei's attention. A fix on the man's well-used rucksack. It was a logo blurred yet natural. A nearby specialist shop a couple of blocks away. Andrei's heart dashed as he zoomed in. Affirming his doubt, he knew the shop. He'd passed it consistently while heading to work. Furthermore, presently he had a lead briefly. Andrea wavered. Was this something he ought to pass on to the police? Presumably. In any case, where it counts, he realized they wouldn't move quickly enough. This wasn't just about the cash any longer. It was tied in with recovering the feeling of safety and pride that the looter had taken from him. Andrei went with the choice he would deal with this himself. Yet, cautiously, he wasn't searching for a battle. He simply needed answers. Andrei had no thought that reality he was going to uncover would change everything. The following morning, Andrei stopped his old car a street or two away from the specialist shop. It was a little summary structure with a rusted sign that read, East Side Auto Fixes. From a distance it looked innocuous. Simply one more striving neighborhood business. However, Andrei's stomach told him in any case. He sat in the vehicle briefly devising a strategy. He wasn't the sort of man to carelessly act. Also, he in no way wanted to seriously endanger himself. This wasn't tied in with defying the looter straightforwardly. No, Andrei needed to notice. To assemble proof he could take to the police. Something that would make them act. With his hoodie pulled tight over his head, Andrei left the vehicle, also, walked nonchalantly past the shop. His eyes checked the part, searching for the knapsack. Nothing. He returned again, professing to tie his shoe close to the entry. Still no sign. Similarly, as he was going to leave, a dark car maneuvered into the part. A man ventured out and Andrei's stomach fixed. It was him, the looter. The man was dressed diversely now, wearing oil-stained overalls. Be that as it may, there was no mixing up those eyes. Or on the other hand, the manner in which he moved. Andrea watched from behind a left vehicle, as the man opened the shop's side entryway. Also, vanished inside. He noticed the tag of the car. Taking out his telephone to snap a speedy photograph. His hands were consistent at this point. His trepidation supplanted by a feeling of direction. Over the course of the following couple of days, Andrei got back to the shop during his available energy, mixing into the environmental elements. As he saw from a good ways, he watched the man travel every which way, continuously conveying a similar battered rucksack. Andrei was mindful so as not to get excessively close. Realizing he was unable to risk being seen, one night as the shop was shutting, Andrei saw something surprising. The man ventured out conveying an enormous duffel pack. His developments rushed and tense. He set the pack into the storage compartment of his vehicle. Prior to driving off, Andrei didn't follow. Not yet, however. He realized he needed to move quickly. That evening he assembled all that he had. Photographs of the man, his vehicle, the tag and, surprisingly, the shop's working hours. He imparted everything to the police, trusting this would be sufficient to drive them right into it. Days passed without a word. Dissatisfaction stewed in Andrei's chest. He'd done all that he would be able. In any case, it actually felt like nobody was viewing this in a serious way. Then one night, as he found a spot at his kitchen table, his telephone hummed. It was a message from an obscure number. You believe you're brilliant, avoid it or the consequences will be severe. Andrei's heart sank. Another person. Briefly, question sneaked in. Perhaps he ought to ease off. Perhaps this did not merit the gamble. Yet, as he checked out at the family photograph, taped to the cooler, he realized he was unable to allow dread to control him. He needed to own this for his children. For his better half, for himself. Andrei had crossed a line. Also, there was no way but forward at this point. The following morning, Andrei woke with a recharged feeling of assurance. He was unable to disregard the danger. Be that as it may, he likewise couldn't allow it to deaden him. He chose to make one last stride. Prior to passing on everything to the police, he would defy the man. Be that as it may, not the only one, Andrei connected with a close buddy, Tyrone, who functioned as a safety officer at a close-by stockroom. Tyrone had a quiet disposition, yet conducted himself with a calm strength. After Andrei made sense of the circumstance, Tyrone consented to back him up. However, "We're simply talking," Tyrone said immovably, "no legend stuff." That night, Andrei and Tyrone stopped close to the technician's shop, trusting that the man will complete his day of work. As the last light inside the shop flicked off, Andrei's heartbeat stimulated. The man arose, his recognizable rucksack through more than one shoulder. Also, began strolling toward his vehicle. Andrea and Tyrone got out of their vehicle, shutting the distance rapidly yet carefully. "Hello," Andrea called out, his voice consistent. Be that as it may, to make the man halt abruptly. The man turned, his eyes restricting as he perceived Andrea. "What do you need?" he snapped, his hand instinctually advancing toward his pocket. "Loosen up," Andrei said, lifting his hands somewhat to show he wasn't a danger. "I simply need to talk." "Discuss what?" The man snarled, his stance tense. Andrei took a full breath, staring at the man. "About the burglary at Henderson's Market." "I realize it was you," the man giggled. Yet, it was constrained, uncomfortable. "You don't have a clue." "I am familiar with the rucksack," Andrei proceeded with his voice firm. "The logo, the manner in which you left the store. Everything, and I gave everything to the police." The man's grin vacillated for a part second prior to returning. "You believe you're an investigator or something to that effect. You didn't get anything." Andrei ventured nearer and Tyrone remained close by. Quiet yet forcing. "Perhaps I don't," Andrei conceded, his tone moving to one of controlled outrage. "Be that as it may, I have to the point of making them focus. Furthermore, they will. It's inevitable." Briefly the man didn't say anything. Then, at that point, his grandiosity broke. "You don't have any idea," he murmured, his voice low. "Then, at that point, cause me to comprehend," Andrei shot back. The man looked around, as though gauging his choices before at last talking. "I would have rather not done it. I wanted the cash. My child's wiped out and the bills continue to stack up." "That is reality." Andrea gazed at him, his own indignation blending with something unforeseen. Compassion. He didn't approve what the man had done. Yet, he perceived the distress in his voice. "That doesn't make it right," Andrei said, his voice milder at this point. "You pointed a weapon at me. You undermined my life. That is not something I can simply neglect." The man gestured gradually, his shoulders drooping. "I know, and I'll make it right. I swear. Simply allow me an opportunity." Andrei traded a look with Tyrone, who gave an inconspicuous gesture, then demonstrated. Andrei said, "Turn yourself in. Own up to what you did." The man faltered. Yet, something in Andrea's voice appeared to contact him. At last he moaned, "Okay, I'll go to the station tomorrow." Andrea have little to no faith in him. However, he realized he'd done everything he could. As he and Tyrone strolled back to their vehicle, Andrea felt a bizarre blend of help and vulnerability. The showdown was finished. However, Andrea didn't know whether the story would end the manner in which he trusted. The following day Andrea's nerves were tense. He'd went through the early daytime looking at his telephone, half anticipating a call from the police. Or on the other hand some sign that the man had stayed faithful to his commitments. By the evening, his understanding wore ragged and he chose to quit pausing. Andre called the area and amazingly discovered that the man had for sure approached. He handed himself over and admitted to the burglary, giving subtleties that matched the security film. In Andrea's record, the official on the telephone sounded intrigued. Relatively few individuals would do what you did, Andrea. He said you handle this the correct way. Alleviation washed over Andre. Be that as it may, it was touched with waiting resentment and trouble. The burglary had shaken his feeling that all is well with the world. And keeping in mind that the man's account of franticness pulled at his heart, it didn't delete the trepidation he'd felt that evening. Still, he really wanted to feel a little feeling of win. In the weeks that followed, Andre attempted to push ahead. The store supplanted its security framework. What's more, his colleagues frequently monitored him. The experience made an imprint. Be that as it may, it additionally showed Andre something important. That boldness isn't generally about actual strength. Or then again striking motions. Now and again it's tied in with standing firm despite dread. Furthermore, making the right decision in any event, when it's hard. Concerning the man, Andre discovered that he'd been condemned to local area administration. Also, compulsory advising. The court thought about his conditions. Furthermore, allowed him an opportunity to revamp his life. Andre didn't have sympathy. Be that as it may, he trusted the man would utilize this additional opportunity. Shrewdly one night, as Andrea secured the store after another long shift, he stopped to check out at the surveillance cameras. The apprehension that had grasped him weeks prior was still there. Yet, it at this point not controlled him. Rather it had turned into a sign of his strength. A demonstration of his capacity to confront the impossible. Also, come out more grounded, Andrea strolled to his vehicle. His head held high. He realized life would constantly toss difficulties his way. Yet, presently he comprehended something he hadn't previously. Defending yourself doesn't mean carrying on of outrage or vengeance. It implies assuming command, tracking down equity and recovering your power based on your conditions. Life won't test us in manners we ever anticipate. Be that as it may, how we answer characterizes what our identity is. Assuming you've at any point confronted a second that pushed you, as far as possible offer your story in the remarks. We should discuss flexibility and mental fortitude. What's more, assuming this story impacted you, remember to like, buy in and share. Your help assists us with continuing to recount stories that matter. Andrea's process wasn't just about equity. It was tied in with tracking down strength in weakness. An example we can all acknowledge.